All right. Good morning. My name is Lord Giddie. I will be covering the section on digital accessibility. It's a very broad topic, so we have divided it into smaller chunks. Today we'll specifically target digital accessibility for documents. In other sessions, we'll dive more into other components of digital accessibility. For example, how do you make sure that your course in Canvas is accessible? So today what I will do is that I'll go over some of the key principles for digital accessibility, particularly for documents. But before I get into the presentation itself, I also wanted to share some of the things that we are working on for digital accessibility. So one of the things that we are doing is that we wanted to really have a broader take at digital accessibility, and we wanted to provide resources that we can then share across the TCS system. One of those resources that we are currently working on, and we hope to begin testing and finalizing the website in a couple of weeks, so that we can then begin to share it. But the website, what it does is that what it provides is some tools and resources for both students as well as instructors, and as well as instructors. So there will be an instructor toolkit, and for those people who are not necessarily instructional designers, but they are designing courses, so that they would also be able to know what's expected when you are designing a course or a website in terms of accessibility. In addition to that, and then I'll go back to that, we also, for Canvas more specifically, we have a tool called You Do It. So that tool is already incorporated in all of our Canvas courses. So what it does is that it allows us to be able to quickly scan a course for some of the common accessibility issues. So all you have to do is to be able to just simply click, scan, and then you'll be able to scan a course, and then you'll be able to see some of the common accessibility errors and to be able to fix those errors in Canvas. Typically it takes a few minutes or a few seconds. Don't be scared when you see the number of errors. It does provide you with an opportunity to be able to go in and look at the specific error, as well as how to fix that error. It also provides you with the opportunity to learn more about the different errors as well as suggestions. So I'm not going to cover all of that today, but I just wanted to show you that we are looking at digital accessibility from different angles. So I already mentioned what I wanted to cover, so hopefully we share that sentiment in terms of what we should be able to cover in this section. The question might be, why do we even bother with digital accessibility? Well, it's the right thing to do, and what we do know is that as we get older, we will at some point also experience some form of disability. It's just a fact of life, So in addition to that, we already know that a lot of our students may already have different types of disabilities. So we are working with people with diverse abilities. So we need to be mindful when we create documents to make sure that those documents can be accessed by a wide variety of people, and to also make sure that we are able to think about accessibility from the start versus having to do that at the back end, or once a document has been created and then going back and fixing those errors, because that could potentially take even more time. So some of those disabilities, as you know, include mobility, cognition, hearing, and vision. So we have to, for digital products, obviously we are looking at making sure that we are catering for those who may have vision types of impairments as well as other impairments. So what is this digital accessibility I keep talking about? In a nutshell, we want to make sure that digital products, so websites, tools, and technologies are designed and developed so that all of us can be able to access those, to be able to interact with them, to be able to understand them, to be able to perceive what's been intended when we interact with those instruments. So, as you know, when we develop courses using HTML, we also do add other documents within our courses. For example, Word documents, PowerPoint documents, and PDFs. So if the course website itself is accessible, but the documents are not accessible, that renders that course inaccessible. So we want to make sure that the documents that we create or that we design are accessible. So accessibility meaning that we definitely want to make sure that everyone can be able to access and interact with a document, and not just simply those who have eyesight and those who are able to operate a mouse or a keyboard. So we want to make sure that a wide group of people can be able to use our documents. So some of the key principles that I'll talk about, I chose to start first with the simple ones, and I'll show you how to do some of these things in Microsoft Word. But you want to make sure that you check your documents for the title, for the author, because when somebody is using assistive technology, these are some of the things that assistive technology will pull in to be able to know what type of document they're dealing with, including the title of the document, just to provide some context. You want to make sure that you also check for language for that document, to make sure that the language that's been used is the intended language, right? So for example, to make sure that if English language for the US is what you intend for your document, that's what's identified in Microsoft Word. And typically we don't really check into that to see. That's important because for those who are using assistive technology, that also is helpful for those types of tools, to be able to know for pronunciation types of things, that the language that's been used. Finally, we'll also talk a little bit about the importance of then converting your Word document into a PDF file, because then you can be able to share that document for use in different formats or applications. So some of the key things that we can do, and that includes all of us, our students, as well as faculty and staff, to make sure that the documents that we create are accessible, include making sure that it's easy to navigate the document. So using proper headings. I've seen documents where somebody just created their own headings. So instead of using the built-in headings, somebody would just enlarge the text and make it bold. That's not a proper heading. You need to be able to use the built-in headings, and I'll show you in Microsoft in Word what that looks like. To be able to also use lists. Lists are bullet points, numbers. Again, I've also seen documents both from our students and from staff and faculty where instead of using the built-in bullet points, somebody would just use their own manually created lists. That also can create problems for those who are using assistive technology in terms of navigating your document, because they have to be able to know whether something is a list or not. So if you are just creating your own, that can create problems. Others include hyperlinks. We have situations where somebody would just put in, click here. That's not very descriptive. Or somebody would just have a very long URL that they would put there for students or others to click and follow. The proper thing is to make sure that you provide a descriptive title for that hyperlink so that all of our end users would be able to know what that link is intended for. And then we also use a lot of graphics, including tables, include images. So if you are communicating with a student who uses a screen reader and you're using an image and you don't bother to include any type of alternative text, that's not very fair. for that student, especially if that picture that you are including or that image that you are including in your document is intended for information, right? So where it's not just decorative. You want to make sure that we are providing alternative text or a text-based description of that image or that graphic. Another one is when we are, especially when you look at a lot of our syllabus, we tend to include tables in our syllabus. In some cases, those tables are inaccessible. An example of an inaccessible table might be a table that has nested tables, or a table that has, instead of using the built-in table builder, you create your own table within a table so that you can have multiple cells. That in itself can also create difficulties for those who are using a screen reader because tables are read from left to right and from column to column by those who are using a screen reader. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. So finally, another one is color and contrast. I'm guilty of this as well. There have been situations where I wanted to decorate my documents and I've used color and contrast. I've used color to highlight something. So if you use color to highlight, be mindful that some students or some end users might be colorblind, to make sure that you are also including other information that would be helpful for those individuals who may be colorblind. And also you want to make sure that if you are, for example, are using color for direction, where you'd say to go forward, click the red button. Well, if somebody's colorblind, clearly they might not know where you are pointing them to. So we'll take a look at some of those things. Now, one of the things that we can rely on to help us as we navigate through making sure that our documents are accessible is utilizing some of the tools that are already there. Microsoft has a built-in accessibility checker. Use it. It's actually not too bad. So use it. It will allow you to be able to catch some of the common accessibility errors. And it's found in both Microsoft's PowerPoint, Sway. I know that Tracy mentioned in some of her rubrics that they do presentations using different types of tools, including Sway. So you can be able to use an accessibility checker in that as well. Excel, I haven't really used it in Excel, but it's there. You can be able to use it there as well. So what it does, the automated accessibility checker, it looks for errors and then it provides some warnings and tips. And I'll show you what that looks like in Microsoft Word. And it looks at some of those things that we just talked about in terms of what are the key things that you should be mindful of when you are designing a document. So proper headings, formatted lists, alternative text, and tables and meaningful hyperlinks. So let's take a quick look at Microsoft Word so that we can see some of the things I was just talking about. Before I go on, are there any questions? Okay.
When you talk about using the proper headings, are you talking about using the styles?
Yes. So when I talk about using proper headings as an example, is using headings that are built in. So an example might be, but before I get into, let me go through that and then I'll go back. So for example,
Lord, can you repeat the question so people on the phone can hear?
The question was, what do I mean by use proper headings? Do I mean using styles? Right? Yes. So, and the answer is yes, that's what I mean by using proper headings. So for example, there are times when people would do something like this, and I'm gonna type on the screen. So let's say history of Lord. I don't know what to say, so I'm not that imaginative. So instead of using the headings here, then what I would do is just simply, highlight this, bold it, and say, all right, I'm going to make this bigger so that they would know it's a heading. So, but that's not a proper heading. I just simply bolded and enlarged the text. A proper heading would be using the built-in headings here. And what you can just simply do is just, I don't know if I'm either too fast for the machine or the machine is too fast for me. Let's see.
It's probably the machine. Is it fast enough? It's not fast enough.
I had experience with that.
Yeah, let's see. I'll slow it down. What I was going to say is you would click the text, highlight it. Okay. And this is not the difficult part of my presentation. This is where I'm simply clicking this, highlighting it, and going over here and identifying the heading. So using this heading styles. And what you want to do with the headings is make sure that you keep it consistent. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4 versus heading 1 and then skipping heading 2 and then doing heading 3. That logical consistency helps those who are using assistive technology. But before I get into some of those things that we talked about, I wanted to show, so for example, if you wanted to start with properties to see the title of the document, make sure that properties are appropriate, simply click on File, go to Info. Well, actually, it's right here when you click on File and Info. Then you can be able to see the title, and if the title is inappropriate, right there you can then be able to change your title. I also encourage maybe including some tags as well. And you can also see the author here as well. So this type of information is also useful to have there for those who are using assistive technology. And then another thing that I might show is there have been those who have not enabled the accessibility checker. So if you haven't already done so for Microsoft Word, you can also simply click on Manage Document. See, that's the cool thing about not using your own computer. Then you run into that. But let me see, File, Info. Okay, check for issues, and then go to Check Accessibility. So I'll do that again. To get into the accessibility checker, you could go into File, Info, Check for Issues, and there's the Check Accessibility. So that's one way in which you can be able to get to the accessibility checker. Another way, I'm going to close this. Another way is to go into Review and click Check Accessibility. And once you're there, the accessibility checker will be on the right-hand side. So,
Isn't it up there at the top?
yes, so this is the accessibility checker.
But what is that right there next to the protect?
You mean here?
Yeah, what is that?
Yes, this is the accessibility checker. This is the one that I went. This is the second way in which you can check for accessibility, is to. So we were here at home. You went to Review and Check Accessibility. So then it will pop up right here. And what's cool is that it will also show you below here on the bottom part of the screen. It would show you if there's an accessibility issue, what that issue is, and it will give you suggestions for how to manage that accessibility issue. I already know for this document that there is a table that is inaccessible. So when I click on that, it will show me the table that's inaccessible. And here, what I did is that I have a table where I created another, I merged the cells. So that then makes the table inaccessible. So an accessible table will simply be one that doesn't have merged cells, as an example. So I just wanted to show you, first of all, how do you get to the accessibility checker? So that's how you get to it. As a reminder, you can simply go into File, Info, check for issues, and click check accessibility. That's one way. Another way to be able to do that, if you have enabled the accessibility checker in your in Word, you can simply go into review and click on check accessibility, and it will be there. Okay, so I have 5 more minutes. Okay, so now another thing that I also wanted to be able to talk about is, so obviously we talked about headings, using proper headings. Another one is using proper lists. By lists, we mean bullet points as well as numbers. So instead of just simply creating your own, but nowadays Microsoft Word also tries to help you. So for example, if I was just to put 1, nowadays Microsoft will be able to automatically use their own built-in, but in some cases it might not. So what we recommend is that if you are going to be using lists, make sure that you are using the built-in feature versus just creating your own. So lists, we are talking about either the ordered lists. Ordered lists would be numbers. The unordered list would be bullet points. Again, with the same with bullet points, you want to make sure that you're using the built-in feature versus using your own creation. An example might be just putting in a dash and then writing. I've seen that, so try to avoid that. In terms of tables, we talked a little bit about tables. What you want to make sure you have in tables is to make it, just keep it clean and simple, and use the built-in feature for your table. So that means simply going into insert table, and selecting the number of columns and rows. And then you can click on the left-hand side here and include a caption for your table. That then would include a title, which would then allow all students or all users to be able to see the title of the, yes.
Not to cut you off, but I do have a question to talk about the tables and making them accessible for all students.
Mm-hmm.
For that one at the top that you said was a problem, where the Sunday is that's what you consider nested or merged?
Merged cells. Those are merged cells, yeah.
So to make it more accessible, you would have to put Sunday due by 11:59 in both places, like that one right there. Yeah, just to simplify it. Okay.
Yeah, just to simplify it, versus having to merge the cells. Just simply create another row for that.
Which is why when we're working with Tracy during not rubrics, but learning outcomes. Not learning. Is it learning outcomes? When you match them, you have to put them. You don't necessarily merge and say you just itemize them and then. But you delete them. Though.
What happens is
I'm sorry, I'm connecting y'all together.
Yeah.
That chart never makes it into the course.
Oh, okay.
So what we do is because I've eliminated tables where I can because of that situation. So if you look at our template, our learning outcomes are in a nice list. We only use them in the chart for us to make those relationships before we put them into the course.
Now that makes
but
sense.
I'm not using those tables because there is often not a one-to-one relationship, so I don't even want to introduce a table. I just put them in a list and we can't be aligned.
That makes sense. I was like, wait, how does that work? Okay.
Yeah, no, we're not doing all that.
Okay.
Yes.
That's going to make it, the challenges to accessibility are there.
Yes, and because obviously I wasn't able to cover everything that I wanted to cover, we do have this document that is more descriptive, and it includes specific steps. So if you don't already have it, we'll make sure that you get that document. That will then provide you with more insight in terms of how do you make your documents more accessible. In addition to that, we are finalizing a course, which would be a standalone course. What's the proper word? Maybe not standalone. Self-paced course that would feature accessibility in Microsoft Word, accessibility in PowerPoint and PDFs, as well as accessibility in Canvas. So those tools will be there. They'll be more entertaining than I am. So thank you so much for your attention and for your time.